Action. Well, I've got a special guest today, and to those of you around the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, he's a familiar face, a familiar voice, a familiar name. He's a one of the founders in John VanderKlay's Estuary Host Support Group. John VanderKlay keeps trolling me because network, that's it, because I can never get the name right. I told VanderKlay right at the start, you had a bad name for that thing, John. You need a new one. But the network's growing, and I was able to participate in one of their meetings last week. And I've wanted to get Matthias on for a while, and he said, "Oh, I haven't had a chance to get a rando slot." I said, "Well, let's get you on anyway." So this is a great treat. So why don't you begin by telling us about yourself? Take as much time as you need.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's really good to see you, Paul. I really wanted to do this for a long time, and I also would like to see you one day in person. That would be really great. And first of all, the question: have you ever thought about coming to Europe?
Yeah. And I'm sure VanderKlay and Job have their hand in that. I had a good conversation with Sarah from the Netherlands, which will be coming out on my channel in a little while too. I'm banking up a bunch of talks because I'll be on vacation, and that way maybe, I don't know, we'll see. So no, I want to get to Europe. I've never been to Europe, and so we'll have to do an estuary tour at some point in Europe. And so
okay, that perfectly fits with my plans. So no, but yeah, I wanted to ask you this: if you ever thought about a road trip through Europe? Like, I mean, we are now maybe starting to make this a serious endeavor and trying to put meetups up where it's possible, and maybe start this estuary structure. And maybe at some point, if there is some initial beginning of the structure, and let's say next summer or the year after that, you could come to Europe and like do what you did on the I think West Coast it was in before COVID.
Yeah, it got halfway done with the West Coast before COVID. Never got to finish the West Coast. So the folks up in Oregon and Washington and British Columbia are still waiting. So
yeah.
Hopefully
and I mean,
we'll get past COVID.
I mean, of course, I mean, you also would have to consider the costs of flight tickets and hotel and stuff. But I think the community would be great enough now to make a fundraise for such an endeavor or something like that. And I think, for example, I mean, we managed to bring Brian Power's library over here to Europe, so maybe we can bring you over here to Europe, and that's one thing I thought about. Maybe that could be a useful tool to make it more easy. I don't know.
I think that would be great. Maybe I'll talk to my wife about next summer and say, hopefully maybe summer 2022, COVID will be sufficiently tamped down that I've always wanted to get to Europe, and I've never had the chance. So I really look forward to that.
Yeah, great. I would be up for that. And yeah, hopefully you could also visit Germany, but I also would come to the Netherlands, of course, if you have a stop there. And yeah, because I also think there's really a hunger for these kind of conversations over here. And I recognize that in our German speaking meetup, and yeah, that we have twice a month and now it's the 15th time. So and I also think there are more European followers of your channel than you see initially, because they don't comment so much as the Americans, for example, but I think they are out there, because every now and then I see comments on your videos from Germans, and it's hard to contact them via YouTube. So that's also why I wanted to talk to you today, to say to those Germans, okay, here's a nice little community, and you're not alone. There are German speaking and European followers of Paul VanderKlay, and yeah, we would like to connect and to help to grow this community. So yeah, that's also.
Yeah. I just this morning, there was a lovely couple. They have a rented RV and they're touring California, and they were Sacramento's sort of on right in the way to a lot of places, and they're like, well, 10 minutes, let's just stop by the church and see if Paul's there. And so it was it was so much fun just visiting with them. They had an RV with 4 kids in it, and so no, I very much want to get to Europe, and I would love nothing better than to do that. So I think it'll happen one of these years. So
Great, great. That sounds good. Yeah, and then yeah, maybe we can start now, or I can start. I made some notes, and maybe we can just start and see where it goes. And
go for it.
yeah, I mean, probably most of you know this series, how we got here, and I thought, how did I get here before this video today? And well, I'm Matthias. Some of you know me from the Discord server, from the Bridges of Meaning Discord server. I'm 37 years old. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 girls, and we live in a small town near Mannheim in Germany. And yeah, I work in project management, and so yeah, that's basically my life situation now. And yeah, and I mean, so how did I get here? The story is much longer, goes way more back than today. So I grew up in a Mennonite community near Heidelberg in Germany. And the special thing about this community was that it was an intentional community, and also very communal. And so 5 to 6 families lived under one roof, and we had a big house, a lot of children. And so I grew up there with my 2 brothers and all those kids, and basically we grew up as if we all were siblings, so one big family kind of.
Did you enjoy that?
Sorry?
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just amazing for us kids. It was every day you had kids around. You never had to worry about who I'm going to play with. So, and of course we made a lot of stupid things as well, but it was basically a great place to grow up. And one thing about this house was also there was a big kitchen, and every day this community had lunch together. So it was really like yeah, I mean, Mennonites, they have their way of living, and they try to yeah, I don't know, maybe live like the early Christian communities, share stuff, and live together, and go to church together, and do all these things together, right? And so on Sundays we also had our church service where we went together. So it was a very communal living, you could say. Yeah. And I mean, not as communal as Julian and the Hutterites. I mean, they are kind of more radical, I think, because they also have this communal economic enterprise, right? So they work together on the fields, and they share their money. And so our community was not that far, but quite communal, I would say. And so my parents and their student friends, they built this community. So this was the first generation that built this community. And so they, after they finished their studies in Heidelberg, they moved to this town, bought the house, and built the community. And so there was also a lot of building, and they built the house by themselves, renovated it by themselves. And so it was really this, yeah, it was a new beginning, and this is where I grew up. So new house, new structures, a lot of families, a lot of kids, and in this Mennonite community, this was where I grew up. Yeah. And I mean, at the time, this was, I'm born in '83, so '80s and '90s. It was also, I mean, the Mennonite church is also blended at the time, kind of with the hippie movement and the peace movement.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, you talked about this on your podcast as well, like this activist approach that emerged from the Anabaptist tradition, right?
Yep.
And which really made it now into mainstream culture, this activist approach. And looking back, I can really see this very clearly. And your analysis really helps me also to understand my history better, because my parents, they were very active at the time, also politically. They went to a lot of rallies and protests at the time, and were active in the so-called peace movement. And I mean, pacifism is also an important aspect of the Mennonite worldview,
Yep.
right? that's also one thing why they moved around the world so much, because every time they came to a place and some king asked them to do the war service, they said no, we don't do that, and so they had to leave or were whatever, persecuted and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you grew up in that community, you came of age there. Did you stay in it? Did you leave it? Did you go on to more education? What was, because even in, like, say, the Amish, who a lot of people don't understand in the United States. So we have in the East Coast, in the East, we have what they're called the Pennsylvania Dutch, and nobody understands that they're not Dutch. Of course, the Dutchmen understand they're not Dutch. They're Pennsylvania Deutsch, which is of course German. So
Yeah.
and they have Rumspringa, and they have these traditions. So you grow up in there, and then you come of age, and then you have to kind of decide, well, is because they're Anabaptists, they're believer Baptists. So what was that transition for you like? Did you embrace that worldview? Did you reject it? Did you just kind of walk away from it? What happened?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And I mean, you also have to understand from an American perspective that Mennonites in Europe are not the same as Mennonites in America. Of course, that's also a different kind of thing.
Interesting.
Because I never was at a Mennonite community in the States, but that's how I understood it. That you have in the States, you have really more conservative communities as well, and here in Europe, you could really say it's a very liberal, free church. So we have the state church, the Protestant state church, and we have those free churches and these free evangelical or Protestant churches. And Mennonites in Europe most of the time are quite liberal communities, except those that came back from Eastern Europe or from Russia. They are more traditional.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so this was also a very liberal community, and as I said, also a blend of the hippie movement and this strand of Christianity. And your question, so how did I transition from, let's say, childhood to teenage age, and what were my meaning crises at the time, and what did I wrestle with? So as I said, my father, he was also very active in the protest, and there was also in the 90s was the Gulf War. And in Heidelberg, we had at the time the headquarters of the United States Army. And so there were a lot of, in Europe, of course, the headquarters from Europe, of course. And there were a lot of protests going on, and my father was there all the time protesting and stuff like that. And it was a very activistic and chaotic time, also in terms of family relations. And my parents also had a hard time getting along at the time with each other. And we 3 little boys, so I'm the oldest of 3 brothers. And I also remember a lot of fighting between my parents at the time. And when I was around the age of 8, my parents split up. So they divorced, and my father left this community and also left the church, and really went more into this political and secular activist direction. And he also, like, he moved, for example, he moved into a camper, so he never didn't live in a house any longer. And he basically lived this easygoing hippie life of freedom and independence. And yeah, so my mom stayed in this community. And we as kids, we traveled between 2 households, basically. So we were sometimes at my mother's house, sometimes at my father's camper. Yeah. And basically, yeah, I mean, if you look at it now, you could say that basically there was no adult in the room who really looked after the children and the children's needs, but basically adults following their feelings and their dreams, and or parents who were trapped in their own depression and own childhood trauma. So it was not like, okay, children's needs first and then we adults, it was the other way around. And yeah, and of course that leads to chaos and to difficult situations for children. Yeah. And so this was kind of before my transition into teenage age happened. And yeah, how did I deal with this situation is the question. And I think I tried to escape the madness at home, and basically every free minute I had, I went outside and met with my friends. And so my friends kind of became my family, one could say. So my friends were my most important peer group, and probably at an earlier age than if you have normal circumstances. And we had this gang of 4 friends. We spent all the time together, and I also, I mean, you could look at my grades and say, okay, the time my parents split, my grades really. I mean, I was never a very bright student, but I was okay, and I got along. But from that time on, it was I was not a good student, and I also changed schools a lot because yeah, it was just so much chaos going on. And so at school, I also had no long-term friends, but I had this group of friends, and they were very important for me. And you could say from the age of 13 to 14, almost every Friday, I left home and came back on Sunday. So I was really this teenager who went outside and yeah, kind of fled home, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow, that's not easy. That's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put it in perspective. I'm also very grateful because I received a lot from my parents, and I'm really grateful, and I have a very good relationship with them today. And it's just how things are sometimes. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes the zeitgeist governs you if you're not conscious enough or not aware enough. Then you follow just this zeitgeist thing. I mean, I don't know what I would have done in this situation as a parent. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So what was leaving home like? I mean, did you leave home first for work or for school, or I mean, what happened there?
Well, I left home at the age of 18. So also, like, the first moment I could get out, I got out there. So I even asked my parents at the age of 17 if I could move out, but yeah, that was probably also too early. And I mean, like, my friends and I, we were really heavily into punk rock. So we had this punk gang really, and we had this 24/7 punk rock lifestyle. We had our uniforms. We were hanging out on the streets, and yeah, basically, I mean, how did I deal with this meaning crisis? We had this feeling of us against them, right? So we against society. We didn't want to be a part of this society with its corruption and money fixation and emptiness and whatnot. And we really felt that society didn't have anything to offer for us. And I mean, that's kind of a coping mechanism with chaos in private life, but that's how we felt.
Yeah.
And so we traveled a lot to concerts and festivals and other cities, and had also this network of friends of this subculture, right? And for example, we also started our own bands. We went on tour. We organized concerts for other bands, and it was really this underground scene, this punk rock scene, which was also a very active scene. And I can still see the value in this. So this was especially now in these isolated digital times, right? I mean, this network of people connecting and doing things together, doing things yourself, and making art, and yeah, doing like really human connections, and that was a valuable thing, I think, and I don't regret it, but it was not a good long-term solution. Let's say it that way.
Okay. So that's, wow, you've lived a very interesting life already. I mean, your story is very interesting already. So you're living this punk rock life. You're going to concerts. You have festivals. You have a subculture network. Did you get any more education then, or did you just live that way? You know, what about?
Yeah, I mean, I was at home at the time all the time, and
okay.
I went to school. I finished middle school, and then yeah, I mean, what can I say? One thing I wanted to say about this subculture, I think I also see some similarities to this online Discord subculture where we do stuff ourselves. We do like people start their own YouTube channels. People put out their ideas, very open exchange of ideas and stuff like that. And people even start to visit themselves and build this network. And so I see some similarities, but it feels much more on a stable fundament and much more mature and yeah, much more like a long-term solution where you really can grow and you can do it at all ages and not only when you're a teenager, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because when Nick, when I first met Nick and had a conversation with Nick, and Nick said, well, I was a part of 4 cults. I told my wife that, and she says, and now he's following you.
I love that. I love that citation. I was the one who made a meme out of it and put it on the Discord, Yeah, with your photo, like the 4 cults.
That's right. 4 cult Nick. Poor Nick. I memed him. Oh. So, okay. So what then? So you're talking teenage years into that. What does transition into adulthood then? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, we also can, we lost the point of from church to youth culture.
Yeah, hit that.
I mean, as a kid, I went to church, and I mean, like Mennonites, of course, for example, they don't baptize their children, so I'm not baptized, for example. And at the age when you're supposed to like go to this youth group, and the aim is like baptism or something like that, I was out of it already, So I think at the age of 12 or so, I really started to question belief or Christianity, and it was step by step, but I moved out of church at that point, and I considered myself as an atheist from then on. And I mean, of course, I mean, punk rock is also very atheist culture, very basically anti everything, anti society, anti, I don't know, police, anti religion, everything. So that was part of the program as well. Yeah.
Very anarchistic.
Exactly. And I mean, you also said this interesting thread from Anabaptism. Yeah, I mean, there's this connection. Yeah.
Yeah, your voice changed. Yeah. It went to a different mic. I've noticed with some Zoom calls lately, they're switching mics sometimes. It depends on whether you've got the default mic or the other mic. Can you hear me? All right, we can keep going.
All right, so where were we at?
You were about 12. You didn't believe in the church. We talked about anarchism a little bit.
Yeah, and yeah, basically then at the age of 18, I moved out of my parents' households, and I moved to the city of Mannheim. And yeah, basically there I continued with my lifestyle. I was also then more active in organizing concerts and stuff like that. And I basically, like, for a vocation, I always I didn't have a plan, and I always took the option that would be the least effort and which would offer me some amount of money that I could just like cover the daily needs and like live my lifestyle, right? So that was kind of my solution back then. And I mean, yeah, as I also said, it was some kind of solution at the time. It probably was an okay community at the time, because I could have ended up much worse. And I think I was around with basically good people, but it was, of course, it was a very nihilistic and I mean, like, I also like this parasitic concept, right? I mean, like this anti-attitude is basically parasitic storytelling, right? You
you never can stand on your own two legs, because you always have to look at other stuff like anti-society, anti-fascism, anti-religion. It's always this contrarian thing, and it's not a thing in itself, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and I mean, I had to learn it the hard way, basically. I mean, I led this irresponsible life, and yeah, I mean, then one day my girlfriend and my now my wife, she got pregnant, and I was yeah, I mean, basically I had not a well-paying job. I didn't have saved up money. I had no house, and so yeah, no finished education, and then bang, you're a father now. And yeah, so I had to deal with that situation. And
and you didn't want to be irresponsible. You knew what a parent leaving felt like, and a lot of people wind up in that boat.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then suddenly you have to start working on a career and get serious about money, and now you have to join the establishment.
Exactly. And at the same time, you still have your friends who live this easygoing lifestyle, and you're kind of envy of them, and you regret a lot of things. And yeah, I mean, yeah. Exactly.
So did you make new friends, or did your friends have their girlfriends get pregnant too, or what happened? I mean, because you need a community. So what happened?
Well, basically, yeah, we made new friends, and we had friends who also started families, and but we also had our old friends, and that was always a potential for conflict, right? I mean, you're at home with a family, but at the same time there are these concerts out there, and you want to go to a concert and have some fun. And yeah, that was always a difficult thing, and I also had to grow up on that front and learn some things. And yeah, I mean, like no finished education, no well-paying job, and family to care for. And yeah, I mean, it was a rough time. We didn't have a lot of money, but yeah, we managed it somehow. So I finished school, I went to university, and after that got a job. But of course, that took really some time. That took some years to finish all that stuff, and to have not enough money for a family during that time. That it was quite a way. And yeah, my wife and I, we also had to go a long way, like to that things settled down also between us. And I mean, if you start out so unsorted, with such an attitude and with such a history, it takes some time to work that out, right?
Yeah. So what happened in terms of church or God? Was all that just to the side as you're putting your life together and sorting things out?
That was never an option, basically.
Yep.
I mean, that's also sometimes I think difficult to understand for Americans, that it's just really for mainstream culture and for people, church is in the public life doesn't play a very important role or very central role. And I mean, of course, there are still church goers, but it's not in public, and it was never an option for me. So I was still a hardcore atheist, and didn't consider church at all.
Okay. So what's the next chapter in the story now? Was that finding Jordan Peterson, or is there something else in there that's coming?
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing also about becoming a father at such a young age, I mean, it was rough and it was hard, but it's also, I mean, also I think like young people and young guys, I think they need to hear this message that of course it was hard, it was a struggle, but yeah, I mean, at least when I look back, it was also meaningful to work through all these things. And it's also sometimes it's also a good thing to start a family without every security thing checked on the list, and wait till you're 40 and have a lot of money and a house, and then start a family. So I would encourage young people to think about these things earlier.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. It is tough, but financially, but it is very meaningful. And I know people who have done it, they look back on those years
Yeah,
with a degree of fondness, because it's like, well, we didn't have much, but we had each other and we had the kid, and we struggled and we made it through. It's a very meaningful thing.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so the next chapter was really, I mean, yeah, that really took some time then. And I mean, yeah, basically we settled, and I started to work, and we also got our second child, and we married, and so things kind of settled. And at one point we moved out of the city and lived in a town next to Mannheim, and moved then for a job also back to Mannheim. And at this time, that was in 2017, I was listening to this podcast, and it was a podcast that had nothing to do with this corner of the internet or with topics like Jordan Peterson. It was a German podcast called Etherbox Ehrenfeld, and it was basically a German underground lifestyle podcast and nothing to do with religion or something like that. And they were talking about this YouTube psychologist that was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And yeah, I mean, of course, John Peterson. And it sounded very interesting. And so I checked out the Rogan episode, and I was blown away, right? I mean, I never heard a university professor talk like that with such clarity. And yeah, I started to watch everything I could find of him, his university lectures, maps of meaning, everything. And soon after that, the biblical series started, right? And then I was already in. I watched every episode every week. And basically when my friends watched Game of Thrones, I watched biblical series. And yeah, I mean, and I didn't have anybody to talk about it back at the time. And I always thought, so, okay, here's this guy who talks about the Bible in a complete new way. And what does the church think of this? So why does the church not comment on this? So why isn't some official church guy commenting on this perspective? Is this valid? Is it? So what do Christians make of this? That was one of the first questions I had after the biblical series. And soon after that, of course, I saw Pastor on Jordan Peterson, and that was your video, yeah, right? Yeah.
So what difference did Jordan Peterson, what differences in your life did your interest in Jordan Peterson start to manifest with?
What do we mean? Do you mean by the question?
That's kind of a strange question.
Yeah.
So you started listening to Jordan Peterson, and then of course you found me. And I mean, you also have a relationship with this strange American who's living in Germany. And I mean, did you find him through the Discord server, or did you meet him before? Or I mean,
you mean David?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I met him before, and he was a volunteer. Like as a young man, he came from America to Europe, and he was a volunteer in the Mennonite community where I grew up.
Oh, interesting.
You know? So, and back at the time when he was there, I wasn't around as much anymore. Sometimes I visited my mom, but I wasn't around as much, and I certainly wasn't in the church anymore where he was around a lot. And so we knew each other, we had talked to each other, but that was also like, okay, I didn't have anybody to talk about these Jordan Peterson things or about things that you cover on your podcast. And at the time I was traveling to work by bus every day, and from time to time I met David on the bus, right? Because he had moved to Mannheim with his family to plant a church. And I thought all the time, so, okay, here's this guy, David. I know him. We have small talk. He's a fun guy. He's an American. He's a Christian. Maybe he knows Jordan Peterson. So then, as I said, sometimes we met each other, and one day, like, we exchanged numbers, and one day I wrote him a message and just asked, sorry, David, do you know Jordan Peterson? And he said, like, I'm listening to him on the phone right now. No? And then basically, yeah, I mean, he was in a similar situation because he listened to Peterson, but he had nobody to talk to about him.
Yeah.
And I mean, also these like the Mennonite Christians, let's say, they don't know, most of them, they don't know Jordan Peterson. And when they know him, maybe they have this picture that he's also this conservative, strange, bigot, I don't know.
Yeah.
And they have, I think, I don't know, but I think they could have difficulties to get into Peterson without this picture of him, you know?
Right. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, or shouldn't listen to this guy because, you know, this would be a dangerous guy to listen to, so I wouldn't want to listen to him. Yeah.
I think that could be the case. This is not a valid thing. That's also only my feeling, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, David and I, we started to talk about these things, and this was before COVID. We started to meet in a pub in Mannheim, and basically we started our 2-person estuary, I think. and we met in a bar, had our beers, and we talked for hours about these topics, right? And so he was also very, I think, refreshed to have someone to talk to. And yeah, I mean, as a church planter, of course, for him, it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, I did a conversation with a church planter yesterday, or 2 days ago, yesterday. And so it's interesting how this is starting to intersect. Well, estuary is, I mean, my estuary thing is sort of like church planting, but we're not planting churches, but it's very interesting. So then you found the Discord server, and I remember when you came there and someone had said, oh, there's these 2 Germans that are on the Discord server, and you were on pretty early.
Yeah. I think I was some, like, maybe the 100th person or so, or even, I don't know, maybe also earlier. But yeah, I mean, I think after 2 days when the server was founded, I was inside. And yeah, I mean, we have a German channel now, and we had, right at the beginning, we had a German channel, but then there wasn't the critical mass of Germans to keep the channel, so it was removed. But now we have, again, a lot of Germans. So every German who is listening now to this podcast, please come to the Bridges of Meaning Discord server. We have a nice German channel there and a nice German sub-community. That's very happy to be in the mother community, in the American mother community, but it's also important for us to have our mother tongue and to work on these things in our mother tongue. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I, every now and then, I'm on the Discord server and I see all of you together in a voice chat room. I thought, oh, they're having their German time. I don't want to go in because then, of course, you're all very hospitable and will greet me in English, and I don't want to break the language barrier for you guys. Yeah. So
one time you were in our meeting. So one time, and I made a screenshot of it. So yeah, that's the proof, you know. Yeah, but wow. Yeah, the Discord server was also very helpful for me. I mean, I was, most of the time, I think I was lurking at the beginning, and I think lurking is also a valuable activity, let's say, if you grow into a community and if it doesn't stay at lurking. And yeah, I learned a lot through lurking, but I always had this feeling like, yeah, I mean, like, you have to embody it, because if you only have these ideas in your head, it's not enough. And probably at some point, if it's only happening in your head, you should better stop, because if you don't do anything, it has no value, really.
Yeah.
And that's
true.
That's also why I started I started meetups, and I started this regular voice chat on the Discord, because I think, yeah, and this is also what people tell me in the meetings, that I'm alone in my city. I need to talk to people. Some people say, I listen to Jonathan Peugeot all day, and I think if I don't talk to people, I'm losing contact to my environment completely, because I learned this language and nobody understands me. And I'm in fear of losing contact to society, to my family. I mean, it sounds extreme, but I think there's something to it, that you have to stay connected to the outer world and to work on this with real people in real life.
I think that's
very
absolutely
important.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just continuing to take notes here.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is such
And
good stuff.
yeah, and I also think, I mean, that's also what Joey and the others who started the Discord, right? The telos of the Discord was always to bring people together for real life meetups. And I think for that, it's a great tool. But I think some people are also in danger of being lost in the Discord, for example. I mean, there are some people who really only do the memeing stuff and only the commenting stuff. And I could imagine that some people are basically at home on their screen all day and don't embody it. I think that's the danger.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And hopefully I'm, now with, I think what you all have developed with the John Van Donk groups, we're going to restart our Sacramento group. It's going to be an estuary branded group instead of a Jordan Peterson meetup. And I suspect more and more we're going to see estuary branded groups start and be able to practice some of what we've sort of been developing over the last couple of years.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you announced this already in your Substack, and I think that's really the next step to roll out what. I mean, as you said, I also am part of John Van Donk's Estuary Host Support Network, and we also meet every other week then. And yeah, I mean, John Van Donk, it was really his idea and his protocol that we worked on last year, and I think it's a quite like it's only some steps process, but it's also very effective, and you can really like learn it and then internalize it, and then it really works. And it also works, I think, in digital environments, but also in in-person environments. And I made this experience on the Discord. It's sometimes it's a bit more difficult because of the dynamic that people pop in and pop out and stuff like that. So that's, for a host, it's very intense and sometimes difficult to manage that. But it also works. And I would encourage people also to think about local concepts. For example, I mean, all what I did was say, okay, every 2 weeks I made this post, okay, let's meet in the voice chat at that time every 2 weeks. And people started to show up. And I mean, and the interesting thing is, because it's a German thing, like, okay, people showed up I've never seen before on the Discord, who seemed to be lurking before, only lurking, and now they have, let's say, their voice or their frame, and now they are in. And I think that is important. I would encourage people. For example, someone was asking in the Catholic channel, like, yeah, could we make a Catholic meetup? Like, really try to make a regular voice chat, and maybe also connect it locally, because if you look on the randos in Space Map, I think the randos in Space Map is a tool that's not used enough. Because especially in America, I mean, in Europe there are only some pins, but in America there are a lot of pins on the map. And I also would encourage people, if you don't have your pin on the randos in Space Map, do it, because it's a great tool to connect to people and to think about in-person future estuaries or meetups or stuff like that. And I would encourage people to think about really regular meetings to form a community, and maybe to connect it to a local thing, that you can also think about starting it digital and then maybe at some point in person. And I think that would be a good way to prepare for this estuary protocol that we maybe will roll out. And and also to think of more ways how can we make this process of connecting locally better, because we have this map. And for example, I also created a meetup account now for our group. I think that's a good thing. And maybe we can you can put these links on the video after that, because I think that would be interesting for the German listeners.
Yep.
And yeah, and I mean, also like your structure is really a good inspiration to think about what resources does my community need. For example, I started a blog where we could like, and other guys said, okay, cool, blog. I would be up for writing some stuff from time to time. Started a meetup group. I also, in preparation for this, I also created a YouTube channel. And I mean, of course, you will probably share your video on your channel, but my plan is also to share it as the first video on our channel. And the plan is really to have, like, we have our regular meetup. Think about how can we make it in person, because one thing also we recognized here in the Mannheim-Heidelberg area is that Mannheim-Heidelberg seems to be the hotspot of Bridges of Meaning Germany. And here are really some people who would also be potential participants in real life meetups. So I think my plan is from September on to, because I have no time before, otherwise I do it before, but in September to start in-person meetups also.
Yep. Yep.
Additionally to the digital ones. And I think, yeah, I think like the Bridges of Meaning Discord and you, it's a very good model. What do I need to grow a community? And to grow a community independently, what happens with COVID, for example, or that you're flexible in person and digital. And I think these are two ways that are a good way. Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Well, I grew up with the Heidelberg Catechism. So, when you say Heidelberg, it's like, I'd really love to see Heidelberg. I've been talking about that, using that word all my life. And so it'd be when my son actually visited Germany when he was in college. And I remember he really liked Heidelberg. He said it was a beautiful, beautiful city. And so I really look forward to being able to meet there. And I'm really excited about, hear that you're starting a YouTube channel. I assume that probably German language content then, which would be great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there will be from time to time some English speaking videos, because I also want to stay connected to the mother community of Bridges of Meaning, and would have some people from there sometimes on. For example, Jacob texted me and wanted to talk to me.
Good.
Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, my plan is really to have conversations with German speakers, and yeah, that's
Wonderful.
the plan.
Wonderful. Well, terrific.
That's the plan. And for example, I mean, on the Discord, there's also Laura Liz, and she's also, I mean, she's an American, but she's a professional translator from German to English, right?
Really?
And she's also sometimes in our meetings, and she's just a lovely person, and
wow,
it's very good things to say. I learn a lot from her, and she, for example, translated my article about the estuary, right? I mean, I wrote it in German first, and she contacted me and said, wow, great article, I would like to translate it because I want to send it to a friend who is a pastor. And so she did this translation, and I think she did a good job. And that's the translation all you could read. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, this is what Bridges of Meaning really makes possible, right?
Yeah.
All these people who can work together on these great things.
Yep. No, I'm super thrilled, and I'm very excited, because I mean, what I want, when I started talking about this, I knew that the only way for something like this to grow is if it doesn't have to everything go through me. People need to take initiative and run with it, and trust that, people are doing this in good faith and towards good ends, and everything that I've seen has validated that. The culture is I think healthy, and people are working well together. So it's just wonderful to watch.
Exactly. And I think I also need to make a shout out to my German speaking community, because one of them said, please shout out and stuff like that. And I mean, yeah, I mean, some people who are part of the regular German estuary are, for example, Althaus, or sometimes he calls himself Gandalf. I think you know the name.
Yep.
He's this smart mathematician, also a traditional Catholic who goes to Latin mass, and yeah, so he's really a character, and he's also I would say a leader of the German estuary. And then also Aaron, young guy who's interested in orthodoxy, and he started to study but stopped studying again, and he's now, I think he will become a stonemason.
Wow.
So orthodoxy and stonemasonry, interesting combination, right?
Yes. Yes. Wow. Well, he might have some churches to build.
Exactly. So and Althaus and Aaron, they show up almost every time, and so there was also one date where I couldn't attend, and Althaus stepped in. So I think we have really a stable community going on right now. And there's of course David, who is also sometimes in the meetups, but he doesn't have time every time. So sometimes he's there, sometimes not. Then we have Leon. Shout out to Leon. He's an aspiring teacher, and he started videos on YouTube about symbolism in fairy tales. So
wow,
we have some creative things going on there, also in German language. And I think, yeah, it's the network where we can really develop something. And I'm excited to see what we'll produce in the future. And
wow,
we have, for example, Dan Walter, who's also, I think he's also a science student or something like that, and he's also a blogger. We have, of course, Andreas, like Andreas the Catholic. He was there sometimes, but not recently. I think he's just working on other things. And
yep.
But we have another Andreas, and he is an interesting guy because he started years ago a Jordan Peterson meetup in Munich.
Okay.
And I browsed meetup.com and browsed all German-speaking Jordan Peterson meetups, and we only have, I think, 3 of them. One in Berlin, one in Frankfurt. Frankfurt was IDW meetup, I think, and one in Munich. And I tried to contact the leaders of these meetups, and only one of them responded, and it was Andreas from Munich. And so he's also now, I would say, part of our estuary on the Discord, and he was also very happy to discover this Discord, because the Jordan Peterson meetup in Munich, as he said, was more interested in the political stuff,
yeah,
and not in the deep meaning stuff. And I think he's very happy to have this connection now. Yeah,
good.
And yeah, and there are others. For example, I mean, Rasputin. You heard the name, right?
Yes.
He's this guy from Switzerland who just recently got on the Discord, and he is a very regular participant of our German-speaking meetup now as well. I think he's in the Italian part of Switzerland, but he also speaks German.
Okay.
So yeah, also very interesting guy. Then we have Tikva, who is also from Switzerland. She works for a church there and works with youth groups, and yeah, it's also very nice participant. And I have to say, really, I'm so amazed that we have all these wonderful people, and almost every week we have 6 to 10 participants, and yeah, it just works. It just functions. Yeah,
that's wonderful. That is wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm so pleased. I'm so happy. So I definitely want to get to Europe. In fact, I was just thinking how, maybe I'll have to talk to my wife and say, let's set aside a bunch of time, and because she's a school teacher, so she's off summers, and I know she would love to get to Europe. She was in Europe when she was a small child, when her parents were missionaries in Africa. So, but we can, I can even set up a budget here at church for something like that. And if people wanted to contribute to it, they could make it a special donation piece. And I'm very excited about this. I had no idea any of this would ever happen. It's a complete surprise to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I also didn't have any idea that anything of this would happen, and that I could. Yeah, I I'm 37 now, and as a working adult, to have this fundamental change in worldview as well, that's an amazing thing. And I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, it's only possible to participate in this community also because it started digital, I think, and I had the flexibility to lurk around and to work on these things. And yeah, I think really like the connection of the digital and the in-person realm is, I think, is the way to go. Yeah. And
Yep.
and also, I mean, at the same time, I really feel it's really a gift, and I'm really thankful for what I received. But I also feel this duty to not let it go and to not just let it happen in my head, but to make it happen and to share it with other people. And I want to encourage all the guys and the girls, like, yeah, I mean, we have to do it. Like, we received this and we have to work on this thing, and we shouldn't let it go.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly the spirit that the local meetup here in Sacramento had, and why Joey and Rick and Tyler, you know, said, well, let's do a Discord server. And this was sort of the second iteration. They tried it earlier, it didn't really take off, and then the second time it took off. And you know, the hours that Joey and Rick and others have put into this project have been, you know, I've been on the side for the most part. They started it up, they ran it, and you know, now the Friday question and answer and the way that Rick has developed that. So now we're starting to have guests in. We had John Vervaeke in, Jonathan Peugeot is coming. Paul Ann Leitner is going to take one. I'm thinking we should have John Van Donken for one of those too. So
I think that would be great, because I could imagine people are curious about, I mean, they heard now, okay, there's this estuary protocol, what's that kind of thing? And I mean, maybe he could just talk about that and answer questions on this protocol, or what else. I think that would be a great idea.
Okay, maybe I'll.
I think John, I mean, he doesn't like Discord, but I mean, you can fix the tech stuff, and he can just
Rick can make it easy for John. John's an old fart, so John, you know, John and tech, yes, has some skills, but not a lot. So
yeah, shout out to John as well, because I don't think I would have started the German estuary without his support network.
Yeah. And that was totally his baby. He had the vision for that. And I said, I want to support you in that. We'll use the channel. We'll announce it. We'll get it going. And I think it's already borne really good fruit just since, I mean, I didn't want to give it a lot of visibility over the last year, because you sort of need time at a certain size to let it grow. And John said, I can't really do more than 3 groups. And I think, you know, 5 or 6 is about the right size for those Zoom groups.
Yeah.
So now that I just talked to John this week, we had another 5 people who are interested in the groups. And so I think it's time probably to start some more of those groups, probably with some other leaders besides John, because he's sort of at his capacity. And so we'll grow out the support network, and that will help the other, you know, actual estuary groups begin to seed and to grow. And hopefully now after COVID, we'll have some daylight that will be able to do that.
I think it was exactly the right way to go, like to give it some time and let people get into the process, work on this thing. And I think it was really good idea to start slowly and kind of undercover, and don't talk about it all the time, and just let it evolve. And now, after, I don't know, a year or what it was, like, have a look and what it develop and work on it and spread it. I think that was the right process.
Did you have anything else you wanted to cover, Matthias? Or, I mean, we can always do another thing if you've got more bigger ideas, but I thought this was kind of a nice way to round this out.
Yeah, I mean, one question I had, but the rest is covered. Like, I mean, you kind of I think, like last week when we talked with John Van Dank, we talked about this idea of mixed martial arts of Christianity, right?
Yes.
And I think some of it you talked about in the Q&A, and it was interesting. And I wonder, have you thought about it? Have you given it some more thoughts, or?
Not really. Maybe we can bring it up again, and doing another Q&A tomorrow. And Maybe we can bring it up there. I think that you're the one that gave me that image, and I think it's a really, you got it some from Vervaeke, and you kind of adapted it a little bit, and then
Yeah.
that kind of got into my head.
Yeah, I mean, basically, what I see on the Discord happening is, well, first of all, I think what you are doing is like maybe building an institution, and I think that was one of the first topics I think that you covered and that you criticized about Peterson, or for example Weinstein, that they don't think about institutions and how to build an institution, how to sustain an institution. And I think what you're doing is really building an institution and a community that can build and sustain this institution. And I thank you for that. That's really a great thing. And yeah, I mean, what I see on the Discord is maybe really John Vervaeke talked about this idea of mixed martial arts of wisdom traditions, and he basically says, okay, we have all these wisdom traditions, and I want to take the best out of the different traditions and make this mixed martial arts of wisdom traditions. And Jonathan Bechot responded on that and said, yeah, but you need a home, you need a super frame, or I don't know how he called it. And I think I connected that, and I think you could say what we do on the Discord is kind of a mixed martial arts of Christianity. I mean, of course, there are the Orthodox and the Catholics, and their super frame is Catholicism or Orthodoxy. But at the same time, they're in this Discord server that's very inspired by a Protestant pastor. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a new situation, right? I mean, it's not like 50 years ago where you have your Catholic bubble and you basically have your picture of the Protestants and you don't talk with each other much, but now it's really constant exchange of ideas between those denominations. And I think mixed martial arts of Christianity is a good picture for that, because we can really see the different strengths of the different traditions, right? I mean, that's also what Peugeot, for example, said.
Yep.
Of course, he says, of course, I mean, he's an Orthodox now, and that's for him like the truest version of Christianity, or I don't know. But at the same time, he can appreciate what Protestantism has to offer. For example, he said, Protestants, they know their Bible usually quite well, and that's a good thing about Protestantism. And he also says, when I see Christians, I don't see a Protestant or a Catholic. I just see Christians, and I see like Christians who take their faith seriously, and that can be a Protestant, can be a Catholic, can be Orthodox. And I think there's something to it. And I think, yeah, this mixed martial arts is a good way to describe this modern mixture of traditions. I don't know. Yeah,
I think that's a super idea. I'm probably going to run with that. I think that's really good.
Yeah,
I think it's really good. And that's very much an estuary type thing, where estuaries are not just places where one river flows. For example, the main estuary of the state of California, you have the Sacramento River, you have the San Joaquin River, which is a strange river because it flows north. I mean, everything in California flows out into this Bay Area, this massive estuary, which is the Delta and the Bay. And of course, you've got San Francisco right there on the Bay. So that's always been the image. So, and that excites me.
And we have people like Job, who goes to a Protestant church, but he also has his crucifix in his home. And that is mixed martial arts, because he goes to the Protestant church, but he takes the Catholic cross and he has the rosary. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I remember when he was talking about, he praised the rosary, I thought, well, this is a new kind of Protestant.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, Matthias, this has been absolutely terrific, and I can't wait to get this video out there. Whenever I have a conversation like this, it's like, I want to share this video right away, but I'll probably wait for tomorrow morning because we've got question and answer at 10, but I'll get this one out there, and that hopefully will sort of nicely set up the Q&A for tomorrow's conversation.
Great. Sounds great. Good. Yeah, it was also a pleasure for me. So thanks a lot, Paul. It was really great talking to you. And yeah, I'm also up or I'm open for modeling estuary protocol on your channel, or what John Van Dunk and you have planned. I'm open to it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sure you'll be a part of it. I talked to Van Dunk about that this week, and I've got some vacation coming, so things might wait until August, but
Yeah,
I think we're going to have more of a rollout in August, which will probably be a little bit more coordinated than we've done with some things in the past. So
great. Could you share the recording somehow with me that I may, if I want to, can also release it?
yeah, I will after we finish, it'll get compiled, and I'll post it right away, unlisted, and I'll email you the link right away.
Great.
Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.